Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here with Jeff Miller, who's a familiar face to many of you, who's a travel attorney and actually writes a column for us. And I've been working with Jeff for how many years? A lot of years.
30 years, 30 years.
30 years. And Jeff always offers some keen insights about the industry. And we had him on a few weeks ago, and it was one of our most popular segments. And so we thought we'd bring him on again to talk about something else. And actually, an area that, boy, if he doesn't know about it, airlines, I don't know who does. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is one of Jeff's specialties. But we're going to talk about the airline business as we emerge from the pandemic, what it experienced during the pandemic, as well as the relationship between airlines and travel agencies. And of course, that's a crucial relationship that we've been following for many years. And you're going to find out about all that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Jeff, first of all, how are you and where are you now? You keep moving back and forth between Florida and Maryland and all over the place. I can't keep track of you anymore.
I'm back in Maryland because the semester is over at FAU. So now I'm devoting more time to my law practice as opposed to academics. So I'm back in Maryland, and I'll be here now really till August.
Oh, great.
Start teaching, and we have face-to-face classes in the fall. So 2 days a week in Florida, 5 days a week in Maryland, starting in August.
There you go, commuting. That's great. Now let's get to this thing. We wanted to talk about the airlines and how they've evolved during the pandemic. First of all, what's your perception of the financial health of the airlines, at least those in the United States?
Well, right now they're doing all right because of the billions of dollars of government money. I mean, believe it or not, Southwest posted earnings, which is kind of amazing. But when you look at it, they posted it because the government's paying most of their payroll costs.
Right.
That's exactly what's keeping the airlines afloat at this moment is the billions of dollars of government aid.
Yeah, so they although that may not go on forever, as we know.
Well, it's not going to go on forever. Yeah.
Yeah. So they got their government relief, and they got it in several of these bills. Do you think they got too much?
Well, I do, but you got to give them credit because their lobbyists are unbelievable. If you go back to the tragedy of 9/11, they got to Congress within a few days of 9/11 before anybody thought about it and got aid. And then after that, it closed off. But their lobbyists are very, very sophisticated, and they know what buttons to push, and they got a lot of aid, more than any other industry that I can think of.
Yeah, no, and they kept flying, and you couldn't beat the prices there for a little while. The fares were pretty astounding, and I know I took advantage of that a few times. That's for sure.
Fares are creeping back up, but they're still in certain markets. They're reasonable.
Yeah,
certainly not the pre-COVID levels.
Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the onboard things that are going on, onboard policies and procedures during COVID. Do you think they adapted the correct protocols in terms of face mask wearing for passengers and crew, empty middle seats, which is now over, I guess, and, of course, cleaner aircraft? Were all these consumer-friendly moves that helped them get people more confident in flying?
I think they were definitely consumer-friendly. I think he felt some confidence in flying with that. And, of course, Delta, I guess, was the last one to do away with the middle seat. Southwest maybe 2 months before that. But some airlines didn't do that, and it didn't seem to hurt their load factors.
Right.
But it clearly was a comfort level. I flew during that time on Southwest. It was a comfort level, though the middle seat was empty. But I think they did a nice job. The crews were very alert to helping people, asking them questions. They actually knew people came on with hand sanitizer, so they did a sweep for trash before the plane took off, getting the things you use for the hand sanitizer. So
sure.
I thought they did a nice job.
Now, of course, the other thing is that yes, Delta no longer has the empty middle seats, and in fact, we just had an extension by the TSA of the face mask wearing edict, which people don't realize. The airlines themselves instituted that policy early on in the process and kept it. The TSA and the government actually didn't have that until the incoming Biden administration, which instituted that rule in February. And now they've, I think, extended it till September or something, right?
Yes. I think that's very helpful. I think it's a comforting level to people. But you also have people on the plane that don't want to wear a mask, or they're sipping a soda for 3 hours, so they take the mask off. That's an issue. But I saw an argument between a flight attendant and a passenger on a Southwest flight to Florida maybe 6-8 weeks ago.
Right.
The person just took their mask off, and the lady said, "Look, I'm not going to fight with you. You need to wear your mask. He said, I'm going to. She said, all right, when you get off the plane, the sheriffs will meet you. And they did. Arrested him.
And you arrested him. No, that's great.
Yeah.
No, and I don't
Absolutely.
think I've ever seen that. I mean, I'll admit the other day I was eating a pretzel or something, and I got busy with my computer, and I started looking at the computer, and the flight attendant came by and sort of said, move your mask up. And the mask was hanging from I'm sorry. And I had to put it back on. It wasn't terribly oppressive. I mean, I haven't done more than 4 hours, 5-hour flights yet. But
I wouldn't want to keep it on going to Europe. I'll tell you that. People say they're going to go to Europe as soon as it opens up. You got to give that some thought.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see. I'll get a really loose mask or something. I have one that's actually pretty comfortable, so we'll see what happens. Now let's turn from that to the onboard policies. What about fare rules and booking policies during COVID? There were some instances I know that the airlines did not refund passengers. They much preferred you to bank your flights. In fact, I did that. I think I still have some money banked with American or maybe JetBlue. My problem is I can't remember where. But that's what is your impression of what they did during the pandemic, and was that consumer friendly or not?
I think what they did was consumer friendly, but they had no choice. They did it voluntarily, or the government would have stepped in. But I think you have people now that actually have credits, either dollar amounts or flight credits. They can't use them because some of them have deadlines.
Right.
People aren't traveling yet. I don't think they're going to get those extended except on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
There's a lot of unused dollars, if you will, that's just going to accrue to the airlines and never be used by consumers.
Yeah, well, I know that I have some that as I said, I can't remember. I think it's on American. I finally used some that I had on JetBlue that I had gained last spring somewhere, and now I think I'm down to 0 there. But I still think somewhere in Delta or American. But that's the problem. I didn't keep track of it. That's on me, I guess.
Well, if you go back to Southwest, was letting you convert your credits to miles, which never expire.
Okay.
So I give them a lot of credit for that policy while it existed.
Now, let's talk a little about the other thing is they did come in and they dropped change fees, which was interesting because, at the time it was not too many people were making changes or they weren't even booking anyway. And that policy, though, has persisted, I believe, is that you don't have to pay for change fees. You do have to pay for fare differentials when you rebook, but which sometimes can be obviously worse than the change fee. But those $200 change fees, which we all hated, seem to be gone as a result of the pandemic, correct?
Yes, but they're only going to be gone until the industry recovers, and they're coming back along with every other fee that they have.
Right.
If you look at their financial statements, their money comes from the fees.
Right.
That's where they're making the money. The seat assignment fees, the baggage fees, the change fees. That's the revenue. That's going to come back.
Yeah, no, and in fact, that's how they were making money, as you mentioned. And every time I look at the ARC reports, I see how many airline fees are being sold as part of the fares. And it actually was down a lot during the pandemic, but it's ratcheting back up. And I do find it still oppressive that you buy a ticket and you actually don't have a seat until you, in many cases, buy that seat as well for some price to be determined later, and I don't know how that is still one of the more oppressive things about the airlines at the moment.
Well, the problem is, and I'm going to go back to the Deregulation Act, which when I was at the CAB, the lobbyists for the airline industry convinced Congress that only the Department of Transportation, the successor to the CAB for Consumer Affairs, could implement policies against the airlines.
Right.
That's why when you had the JetBlue situation in New York State with the time on the tarmac, that went up to the Court of Appeals, and the airlines attorneys got that overturned because it's exclusive to the federal government. If the states had some rights, it would have much more benefit to the consumer. But again, to the airlines' credit, they used lobbyists to be able to convince Congress to say, hey, it's an exclusive right. And actually, what does DOT do? Not much.
Yeah, well, they didn't do much in the last 4 years, that's for sure. We'll see what happens under the new regime with the new DOT, although they seem more interested in infrastructure and roads at the moment than air. We haven't heard too much about pronouncements from our new department. Go ahead.
Well, even going back past the prior administration, DOT has not done much for the consumer. They occasionally put out a rule. Sure, if you have a complaint, you could send it there, and you may or may not get some satisfaction with it. You would be much better off if you could deal through your state attorney general, who would have some power and some interest since you're an elected official.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, well, we'll turn from U.S. airlines, but what kind of job have foreign airlines done during this pandemic? Are they better or worse than their American counterparts?
Well, one of the things, after I did the last video with you and in my last column, somebody emailed me and said, well, Air Canada is not refunding any money. And I was shocked because I wrote back and said, well, if they operate into and out of the United States on a flight, they have no choice.
Right.
So I'm not sure how they're getting away with that. And then I saw something that said, oh, they're going to start to refund money. I don't know how they can do that. It's a government edict that you got to refund the money if it's requested once you cancel the flight. And we're already probably 14, 15 months past some of those flights.
Sure.
I'm not sure how they got away with it. But again, I go back to DOT enforcement.
Yeah. Well, I think we might see a little more in the next 4 years, but we'll see about that. Although, as you said, maybe it's better. And the States would be a harder time to enforce rules on foreign airlines. That's for sure.
Very difficult.
Yeah. Now let's turn to the relationship between travel agencies and airlines. Are they working to be true partners a little more than they were in the past, do you think?
No.
Okay. Short answer.
The airline industry is the only industry I know of that doesn't pay their distribution system any kind of payment. So it's being paid, you're distributing this product for them for free. Now, I understand when you had a 10% commission, if the ticket was $3,000, it took you the same amount of time to issue a $100 ticket. Commission was much different. But they've done away with commissions, starting with Delta in 1995, a long time ago. It saved the airlines billions of dollars. They're there. I don't think they're going to change. The airline, sometimes with corporate deals and international travel, there's certainly some deals out there that you can do with the airlines. But generally, the airlines tolerate the travel agent community. They're there. They don't want to be partners. You can see at all the different travel industry events. It used to be the carriers were the major players. They haven't been at those events in decades.
Well, on the other hand, I would argue a little bit that at the American Society of Travel Agents, we've seen a return of the airlines. They have been coming back, and what's happened, I think, is that you're getting individual deals within. You don't have a base 10% anymore, but you do have individual deals, whether that's a corporate deal or even a leisure deal with individual agencies or groups of agencies. I still think there is some kind of commission or thing being paid. It's just not that base one anymore.
It is being paid. It's negotiated generally through a group.
Right.
Certainly not through the American Society of Travel Advisors, because they don't do that.
Yeah.
But there are certain groups that are clearly getting commissions, back-end commissions, some upfront commissions, but a lot of that's international.
Okay, so some of them, like Travel Leaders and the group, and those folks seem to be having good relationships. And I always, whenever I want to bash the airlines, some of my travel advisor agency friends say, don't, because we have a good deal.
Well, yeah, but I'll point out that's all business travel.
Right.
Very rarely is it. You got flights with 3 classes of service: New York to LA, New York to San Francisco. They got to sell those seats.
Right.
They're willing to work deals on those. But that's business travel. That's not leisure travel.
Which is going to be slow to come back, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Very slow.
What do you think that? So you don't believe they really have been very flexible or receptive business partners for travel agencies? The airlines?
On a case by case or agency by agency basis, but generally no.
Okay. Now, as we emerge from the pandemic, do you think, are they healthier, the airlines, obviously, than the agencies that are selling them now, right?
Well, I think the airlines are healthy because of the government money.
Right.
And we chatted a little bit before we got on air here is, the business travel has not come back, which is certainly not your focus, which is the leisure travel. But the business market has not come back. And now for a carrier like Southwest, it really doesn't have international business travel. They go to the Caribbean and Mexico. But for the international carriers flying to Asia and Europe, that's their market, and that's where their revenue is. And that's not coming back. I've heard people say maybe 2024, and some people say it'll never come back to where it was. People just aren't traveling. Either they don't want to, or they've got Zoom now, or I don't have to go travel across the country. There's always something that's going to be a face-to-face meeting is required. But I think the business travel is never coming back to pre-COVID levels. And when it comes back gradually, that's when the airlines need that revenue.
Well, in fact, I think I just saw come across my desk a press release from the Flight Center business travel unit saying they hoped they thought that business travel would come back to about 50% of what it was by the end of the year. So that's what they're hoping at this point. Whether that's a pipe dream or they have some firm business to think that is going to happen, I don't know.
Well, I have a lot of friends who are corporate executives, and they're not traveling.
Right.
And they would normally be on the road a good amount of time in international flights or transcontinental flights. They're just not traveling.
Got it. Yeah. Now, what about as we emerge, what would you like to see the airlines do that maybe they aren't doing right now for passengers and obviously for travel agencies?
Well, I'd like to see them work more with the travel agency community. I think that would be very important, particularly with promotional type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, when Southwest went into Hawaii, I guess it's already a year and a half now. I mean, they work with the community to try to promote those flights for obvious reasons. They're a new guy on the block. I just think it's very important that you can't run a business in the travel industry without air support. I mean, if you're Hawaii, certainly not. You're not taking the bus. But I think it's very important. I think it really takes some insight by the travel executives of the airlines to say, hey, why don't we work with these folks? We're not paying you a commission, but maybe we've got promotional dollars for you. Maybe we do have some back-end specialized deals for you. But let's not be on the opposite sides of the fence.
Right.
And we're willing to work with you, and you get emergency situations. We'll try to clear seats for you if necessary, if possible. I think that's very important. I think it's from the travel agency community also. But again, I think it's the major travel agencies that do a lot of corporate travel that are really the ones that are working with the airlines. And it comes back to a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
I mean, I can call an airline and I need a favor to change the thing. If the agent I talk to, wherever they're located in the country, wants to hit the right button, they can do it.
Right.
They can also say, I'm really sorry, sir, that's not our policy.
Yeah, that's true. So they have to work and be a little more flexible, obviously. And of course, to my last count before pandemic, I think travel agencies in different forms still sold about half of all the airline tickets in the U.S.
It's amazing when you look at the ARC numbers. It's incredible.
Yeah, the same thing with the ARC numbers, though, is I noticed that the actual number of ARC certified locations just dipped, I think, below 11,000 for the first time that I've seen. I remember when I came in the business, it was up to about 35,000 way back in the 90s, and now we're down to 11,000. I always tell my friends that's not really evidence of the health of the travel agency network because a lot of those, locations are consolidated. I think, for example, a large agency group like Travel Leaders, Internova probably sells all through pretty much one or two locations, I would think.
I'm sure they do. I think you're correct.
So it is that number, the ARC number is, people say, well, there's only 11,000 travel agencies left. No, well, that's not really true. There are 11,000 ARC accredited locations.
Nobody knows how many at-home agents there are. You probably have the best numbers, and you don't know how accurate that is.
We only know what our sub base is, and that's a total number of individual travel advisors. We do know that they are pretty much all of the. Maybe there's another 20,000 on there somewhere, but you also have to define who's an agent, who's not. So it's always, everybody always asks me that question: is how many travel agencies are there? I said, you're asking. Even though I'm in the business for this long, I still can't honestly tell you what they are.
No, I agree. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. I mean, we think it's roughly 100,000 advisors, maybe 120,000 advisors, of course. And we have seen some people who stopped being travel advisors, at least for now, or basically gave up in the past year. So we're probably down 15, 20,000 in terms of numbers of individual people working in travel as advisors. That's a pure estimate. I have no idea except what I see on the subs because they don't look. Maybe, from our subscriptions, we see they're not looking at the newsletter again, but we still have, 85,000 that are. So, we're very happy with that. And we think that number, who knows, might grow or at least not go down anymore, especially now that things are looking a little better.
I would agree, but you need more young people in the industry.
Yeah, well, we're seeing a few. We're seeing a few different ones. I interviewed a very young travel advisor the other day, got his own agency, who is organizing large parties in Vegas, Miami, and Bimini. So, hey, I wish I could participate. I don't think I'm in his demographic anymore. Although I did plead to come, bring me along. I'll just be the old guy in the back, right? So anyway, is there anything else you want to tell our travel advisors, all the 85,000 out there, about the airlines today and what you think the future holds?
I think you have to be aware that the airlines are changing schedules continuously. And if they have clients that are in that situation, you got to make sure the airline is willing to work with you. And if they change you to a flight that's totally unacceptable, they have to give you your money back.
Right.
Have to credit it back. They can't force you into a two-stop from a non-stop flight. I think they have to be aware of that. A lot of times people don't know that, or they just accept what the airline does because they routinely reroute you to another flight.
Right.
But I think it's very important that you know your rights. If it doesn't work at all, get your money back.
No, absolutely. That's great advice. And well, we're going to be talking to Jeff in the future. We have a few other topics that I think he wants to have his say on. But we'll probably in the next few weeks we'll sit down again. But we started with airlines because that's what Jeff knows. That's where you got into the business that way. There's this old CAB, and you've been covering and observing what the airlines do, especially the relationship with travel advisors, for as long as I can remember, and for the 30 years that you and I have known each other. So we thought it would be great to get your perspective, and I hope all you out there thought this was very valuable. And we'll figure out the next big topic that Jeff's going to take on, and we won't tell them though, because we don't want to surprise whether it's car rentals or hotels or anybody like that. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you so much. Stay safe. Travel safe.
Everybody travel safe, and you do too, since you'll be on that commute between Florida and Maryland. I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.